What were your thoughts about the interview, just offhand, so we could just get right into it?
I mean, there were a lot of jewels. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in there that was good. The old dirty bastard stories were probably the most touching. That was the stuff that kind of probably just resonated with me the most. I think the love that they had for him really came out, like sincerely. It was
Mm-hmm.
probably the most sincerest moment of the interview, in my estimation. And also, they finally gave him his flowers for what he actually meant to the group. They got into his competitive nature and desire, which I loved. I love that part. Like those are the little hip hop tidbits that you kind of like love to hear. Because I mean, for those of us that was there, it was like I told you, Mike. I mean, they went in order in terms of who had the star power on Enter the Wu-Tang. So Meth went first. Dirty went second. This
Mm-hmm.
is the first time you ever really hear somebody like really giving some credence to that being a thing. Like, no, Meth was number one, Dirt was number two. Dirt felt that he was number two and wanted to be number one.
Right.
Like so like stuff like that I found to be interesting and really sincere, just how they spoke about him and his importance to the clan as a whole. So that was pretty strong, but there's a lot of stuff everywhere, Mike. That was
There's
the
a
most
lot.
touching thing to me. So I mean, I'm gonna go back to like some of the stuff that I was sending you, that that I was talking about. The whole, the other big taking point away outside of Old Dirty Bastard was the whole Staten Island thing, the whole last borough to get in the building kind of thing on the rap shit type of thing, and even goes saying like the scripture, the last shall be first. You know,
Definitely.
because when you actually look at it, it's like, oh no, they were the last guys in, and they
Mm-hmm.
did take it over in a way that nobody from any other borough had ever taken over rap.
No, that's real. I want to
Yeah,
ask the people in the room too, like, what were some of the standout moments you thought about in the interview? Joe Bro says that Delphonic story was wild.
I was about to get to that. That was my third point. The Delphonic story by Ghost at the end. He got these old dudes into a shootout, Mike. Only
Only
Ghost, dude.
Ghost.
Only Ghost. We're thinking the same thing. Only Ghost. And
Only
he's like,
Ghost.
and Mike, and he's telling the story, and it's like if you just like, I mean, Mike, I've met Ghost one time when I was in college about 20 years ago. This is around Supreme Clientele time. You know what
Okay.
I mean? He came to North Carolina A&T. Ghost is one of those guys that you can feel his energy, especially if he's Aggie. It reverberates. So when you're like, he's telling these stories, it's one of those things. It's like, unless you've ever really been in his presence, you really don't know how it resonates. He's one of those guys that can make you feel what he's feeling. Like he does it in
He
music,
does
but
it in
no, no,
music,
no.
yeah.
Yeah, but no, 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 that's real life shit. You know what I'm saying? So when he's
Yeah.
telling the Delphonic story, I'm thinking about like the time that I met him and like the mood that he was in that day, and I'm like, yeah,
You
yeah, it
know what?
sounded
There's a lot
about
to get
right.
into, and Ghost did a lot of the talking because I think it was his first time on Drink Champs, and I think Ray's third time on Drink Champs.
Correct.
I will give it to Noriega and DJFN, EFN, excuse me. They did a really good job in this interview. And I know we were talking about that offline. Like Nori's journalism chops is continuously getting better. You can tell he's working on it. But I did want to start from the top though. Like one of the first stories that was on there when they were talking about Hot 97 and all of that, and
Mm-hmm.
Hot 97 Band and Wu-Tang. Just listening to that story, it made me, because I come from a radio background, for those who don't know, and Ghost is my favorite rapper, you know what I'm saying? MC. And it's just, I
Yeah.
understood the politics of radio, right? And I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
it until I got into it, until I started interning in radio. Radio One, like what? I was 18. And the fact that there is a station that feels like they have the audacity, the power, and everything else to ban the most important group in your city and probably the most important group in hip hop, period, at that time, I
And
think
possibly
that's
history.
wild. That is
Mike,
wild. That I mean,
Mike,
really, off that alone, hip hop fans shouldn't fuck with High 97 anymore. Period. The
I
fact that
mean,
they felt like that they had to get back in the good graces of them, like what?
so So, Mike, I mean, you're not just talk. I mean, when you're talking about them being the largest group in the city, I think you're kind of under contextualizing it.
Yeah.
This is arguably the greatest group of all time in hip hop, and definitely the most innovative and the closest thing that we've really ever had to some true rock stars coming together in formation, being banned by our biggest station.
Or being banned by New York's biggest station. But I guess,
Well, I
internally,
mean, at the
at
time,
the
it was like,
time, yeah.
but at the time, Hot 97 was streaming. I mean,
Hmm.
or at the time, I don't even know what was it called then. Like, what did we call it before? Like, if they were getting like, you heard Hot 97, you could get access to Hot 97 even if it wasn't
No, you're right.
wasn't in New
It
York.
was syndicated.
Syndicated. There we go.
Yeah.
It was in syndication. There we go.
And they had all kind of mixtapes out there, people shouting them out. Puff
Yeah.
is shouting them out on the Benjamins. So the world knows who Hot 97 is. Like Flex and Angie, they weren't just local personalities. Like we knew them here, and we didn't even have the station.
Mike, I used
Terminator
to be
2 says you
I,
can't just blame Hot 97. Who else can we blame?
well, no, see, but here's I mean, valid question, Mike. Who else can we blame? But I want to speak to something from the other side of that as an actual big fan at the time. You want to know something, Mike? Is like that probably hurt them in terms of their ability to expand for a while. But what I'm also going to submit to you, what they had already built up to the point that that happened, that was a footnote for most of us as fans because it affected nothing at all as whether we were about to pick up a Wu-Tang project. Like
Of
Hot
course not.
97 didn't have nothing on Wu-Tang.
I
You
think
know
we
what I'm
have to
saying?
look at
So,
what the climate was like in
yeah.
'97, right? It's funny, you sent me this article. What was the article from? Off
The
the top.
Ringer.
The Ringer.
My home,
Okay, they
yeah.
did an article talking about the kings and queens of New York hip hop, and they did it year by year. And in '97, they kind of skipped that year. They said that New York was in limbo because of Big's death and all that. That may be true, but '97 belonged to Puff Daddy and Mace. You know what I'm saying? And I would give it to Mace, as a solo artist because, Harlem World dropped that year. Did No Way Out drop in '97? That was '97. Yeah.
97. Yeah.
And so that's what New York hip hop looked like in that era, and that was super radio friendly, right? And so
Right.
I think that was an easy cop out for them to sit there and tell Wu Tang, well, we're banning Wu Tang because Wu Tang Forever didn't look or sound like that. And that was
Well,
one of those things too. While Old Dirty went up there, when Puff Daddy won the Grammy for Best Hip Hop Album.
right, right,
Yeah,
right.
I mean because they were,
All
you
these
know,
stories all these stories go together when you start to tell them. Like it makes more sense. Yeah, these aren't like arbitrary things happening with these outbursts that they're having. Ghost and Dirt in particular, obviously,
right.
the two most explosive members in the crew.
I think Wu Tang, if you look at 1997 and where hip hop was going, especially New York hip hop at the time, they didn't really fit in the lexicon of what radio wanted from hip hop singles. Like at that time, I think that's when Tracy Lee had Party Time out. You know what I'm
Yeah, the
saying?
thing.
That's
Yeah,
when, yeah, the thing. That's when Mr. Cheeks and Queen Pen, Party Ain't a Party Till It's Ran Out. Like that's what New York hip hop sounded like on the radio in 1997.
I believe the word is jiggy, Mike.
Yes, and you can even look at how the Locks released. Like I know they released it. Was that '98? Money, Power, and Respect, or was that '97? That was '97.
That was 97 too,
Yeah,
if I'm not
exactly.
mistaken.
So
Yeah.
just the way that they were presented, it lets you know what New York hip hop sounded like in '97. So I feel like it's two things, right? I don't think just what Ghost said added, is what got them quote unquote banned. I think they were looking for a reason to X what Wu Tang was doing out because they were doing something different. They were more lyrical than everything else, and none of
Well,
that
here,
stuff they were doing was fitting into the rotation of what
well,
Hot
here,
97 was doing.
well, see, that's what I mean. Like, like nobody that ever came before, nothing that they did was for radio and found themselves
Exactly.
on radio. They literally, to quote Public Enemy's album, they bum rushed the show, Mike.
They kicked in
Like
the
all
door
the,
for real.
right, all that radio, TV programming, and media out. Like they changed all that because the music was so gritty, but it was so classically undeniable. Not even radio could say no to it. Like you couldn't say no to Cream.
Yeah.
Cream, yeah. Like I mean, Cream didn't sound like hip hop in 1993 either, Mike, or 94.
No, you're right.
Yeah, that's when Electric Relaxation and Snoop and Dre and Cube is still running shit.
You know what 97 reminds me of? And it's funny because hip hop is one of those genres, I guess we could say, that you could capsulate like decades of sounds of other, genres in like 1 or 2 years, right? I feel
Right.
like 1997 was like the disco era for hip hop or something.
Yeah,
And
it was like
how
it's like it came and it went so
yeah,
fast.
and it's like how James Brown couldn't really adjust to the disco era like that because he was coming from another era of music. And
Well, Mike, not to cut you off to
go ahead.
that point, like literally, DMX happened,
Oh
and he put
yeah.
a stop to all of that.
But that's what's great about hip hop. Like the lights can go on and off so quickly.
Yeah,
Spliff Spark says, I got introduced to hip hop in 97. I remember. Yeah.
yeah,
97 was shiny, man. It was
yeah.
jiggy.
No, Mike. Like literally, DMX killed all that with "Get at Me, Dog." Like with the song and with the video in the tunnel and with he killed all of that
No, I mean
quickly.
that was a great rollout. And I appreciate Def Jam for that. That was the only play because at the time
Yeah, rap needed that.
because Jay Z was adjusting to what was going on in '97 in the Jiggy era. He was trying to balance it out in a way that I think Biggie probably would have done it. But again, like you said, DMX came and just
Well,
just
really,
changed everything.
really, that whole thing is Biggie's thing. That's Biggie's blueprint. That's what really what people were doing,
Hmm.
but they weren't as talented vocally, lyrically, or just hit making wise as Big. So you have to glitz and gloss it up to make it sound as good. When it's Big, it just sounds hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Big is a different being. He's like a
Yeah, he's
LeBron James.
different. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just like, yeah, like you gotta like the guys that we talking about. Yeah, no. These guys are different. You know what I'm saying?
Shout out to P White, sent a super chat of €5 from the UK. Said keep up. Excuse me, I can't even talk. Keep up the good work, my brothers. Salute from the UK. Salute to you as well.
Salute.
And make sure y'all share this program so we can all talk about this Drink Champs interview. Like, how many of y'all got through the whole 4 hours?
I did.
Yeah, it was tough. I'm gonna be
2 days.
honest. I need to get. I think I'm like 1 hour left, but I
Last hour's got some stunning stuff though.
so.
Last hour might be the best hour.
Well, tell me about it then. Go ahead.
One thing that we want, that first of all, that's where Ghost is telling the Delphonics story about getting into the shootout with the Delphonics. That's like literally like at the start of the last hour, he's like, oh yeah, he's like, I got the Delphonics into a shootout. You're like, what the fuck, Ghost? Like what? You got the and he's like, yeah, I didn't even tell Ray. I'm like, oh man, I'm like Ghost is wild.
They even found out new stuff about each other on this.
Right.
Yeah,
Ray over there
interview.
looking like shot at got the Delphonics in the shootout.
He was like,
So
"Nigga, I
that
didn't know your favorite movie was Grease."
right. When he talked about Iron Man, I found that to be very striking. Like we all revere Iron Man in this culture, and Ghost is not he's just not a fan of Iron Man. He felt like he had to make it too fast. He was like, first of all, he highlighted the fact that at the time they wasn't getting tracks from anybody else, so it was all RZA beat selection that he's going into. So he's kind of saying that from a perspective of like, well, I'm going technically clean up hitter in this lineup. A lot of beats are gone. He didn't say that, but he's talking about specifically, he's like, oh, I wasn't getting Pete Rock primo beats. So he's pretty much saying, he literally said, I took the best beats that RZA had left. So that lets you know in his psyche kind of what he's thinking. Like, I don't have no incarcerated Scarfaces. I don't have no Brooklyn Zoo. I don't have no Bring the Pain. I don't have no shadow boxing. And so there's that part of it when he's discussing it beat-wise, and he does it very carefully so that it's like you really got to be paying attention to what he's saying when he's saying that. And then he gets into where he was as a writer and explaining why he's not on Assassination Day in The Faster Blade. A lot of that was because of his health, being diagnosed with diabetes. And he was literally talking about mentally, he wanted to be in a place to do what him and Ray did on the Purple Tape, but about what he was going through personally and mentally and health wise, he wasn't in that place. And so you have records like, All That I Got Is You. It's more personal. It's dark. He considers Iron Man to be a dark album. And he's like, he's like, go listen to it. He's like, it don't hit like Ray shit was hitting. You know what I'm saying? It's not that. It's darker. It's moodier. And when you think about it, it is, Mike, because there are more records on Iron Man that have more of the rainy days feel than have more of maybe like a ice cream or incarcerated Scarface's feel. Like Fish. Like when he said that, I thought about like the beats to Fish and Cam A. And I was in Box in Hand, and I'm like, those are moodier tracks. It is kind of like a little bit more dense. It don't hit you the same. It's still classic shit to us. It's just not classic shit to Ghost.
I mean, you hear that from artists where it's like they're not really big fans of certain albums, whether they be classic or not, when they were in a dark place. It's interesting, man. Maybe because of, I think Supreme Clientele is what made Ghostface super to me. Like, I've always been a fan anyway. I'm a Wu-Tang fan to the heart. And shit, Method Man was my favorite rapper growing up. But I feel what he's saying, because Iron Man to me is not the Supreme Clientele Ghost, and it's not on a quality level. It just feels like he was in a different space. And I feel like he got better, but he's one of the few that I think he was able to elevate himself with not just getting RZA beats, working with Carlos Brody, working with Juju, and everybody else's best work is with RZA.
Right. So I think Iron Man is the reason for the stepping out of the box of Supreme Clientele, because although for me, Mike, like Iron Man beat wise is not as good as Liquid Swords or the Purple Tape, but it's more eclectic. Like I love some of the beats on there, like Iron Maiden. Like Iron Maiden's one of my favorite RZA beats. That's the way Iron Man kicks off. You know what I mean? And but for me too, the vibe to that is kind of Cuban Linkish. You know what I'm saying? The beat isn't, but the vibe is. And so I get what Ghost is talking about. And now you understand too, because you and I have always said this. Ray's a better rapper than Ghost on Iron Man too. Well, now we're hearing why.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Well, now we're hearing why, because Ghost is literally sitting up here talking. He's like, no, I was in a fucked up headspace. I couldn't write like that. He's like, that's why you hearing Ray on the Faster Blade by itself. That's why he's like, I couldn't get on Assassination Day. He's like, I was fucked up that day. I couldn't write, And so now it's explaining even like why lyrically, because I mean, Mike, I don't know about for you, it's more poignant on Iron Man, but lyrically he seems sharper on the Purple Tape. You know
what he does. No, I agree with that. I also, because I know when we were putting together our Wu-Tang list, right? Our top 10 Wu-Tang albums. I think I was talking to you offline. My debate was Dirty Version and Iron Man. And I think I said I would listen to Dirty Version before Iron Man. But it's hard to put Dirty Version ahead of Iron Man just based on the lyrical abilities and everything that was on Iron Man. So there's Mike, something in there that I feel what he's saying. You know what I mean?
Like, how about this? Even if you just listen to Ray on Rawhide in '95 on the Dirty Version, and then listen to him a year later, like on Iron Maiden and on Daytona 500, it's like, nah, dude, that ain't the same guy. And so the lyrical capability is taking leaps and bounds even in just a year's time for guys who are already lyrically on point and sharp. Mike, it's their claim to fame, and they actually got better at it. Yeah. And there's a lot of evidence of that on Iron Man. But also, too, I'll say this, too, Mike. Iron Man's the first Wu-Tang album that really doesn't totally feel like some Wu-Tang shit at moments. Ghost was the first one to kind of identify his own sound early, because when I go back and listen to Cam A and All That I Got Is You and records like that now, I'm like, oh, no, that's Ghost. He was in there still. Like, that's the Ghost that we kind of know now still, you know?
You're right. All That I Got Is You doesn't sound like anything that the Wu made before that.
No, it's a total venture. But that whole album kind of is even beat-wise, but when you hear it, it's like Ghost is telling you, he's like, oh, no, those were the beats that were left. And then, like, all the Wu-Tang shit is gone, so I just had to take the dopest beats.
Wow. That's amazing. You know, another thing that I got, and I'm gonna get back to like that last hour in a second. Go ahead.
I just want to. That makes me actually give Iron Man more credit when he's
Yeah,
talking about that he's picking the last of the beats, kinda,
I
and that
agree.
he only has 60 days to record, and he's having writer's block. Hold on. All that was going on, and you made that.
We
Well,
were
now,
just talking about adversity. You know what I'm saying?
right?
In the
Adversity
episode before
matters,
this. Yeah.
and
It
so
makes you
now
a
you're
greater
seeing
MC.
it does, and so when you hear him on Supreme Clientele, understand that's the first time you're really getting to hear Ghost like on 10.
And it's
You
interesting
know,
because in many ways, Supreme Clientele feels like a debut solo album. And I guess I always thought that because him and Ray always shared projects.
right? But
But
no, but it's all those other things that you didn't know that we know
right.
now, and now you understand why. Because Mike, I'm like you. It's like I think Iron Man's a classic, but for some reason, Supreme Clientele feels like Ghost's debut.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a coming out party, Mike, and it's rare that somebody's like, I think he's what 8, 9 years in the game when he drops Supreme Clientele. Like
Yeah.
Into the Wu-Tang come out in '93. When does Clientele come out?
January of 2000. So yes, yeah, 8 years,
Yeah,
or
so
7 years in the game.
he's 7 going 8 years into the game, and you're just really getting to know him, like in who he is as an MC on his own weight. Like you knew who Ray was like early,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Ghost. You want to know? So let's go to that too. When he's talking about Iron Man, he's talking about how he got his shit from Ray. He's like, no. He's like, my whole shit like came from Ray. I was playing off of him. He's like, Ray's cold. You'll get lost in Ray's shit. So he spoke to being lost in like that Cuban link chamber with Ray, and how Ray is just so vivid and so sharp that
Mm-hmm.
you get lost in what Ray's doing, and you want to vibe on that vibe that Ray is doing. Because I told you, Mike, like for me, nobody embodies like that New York hip hop aesthetic more than Ray. And so I think that's what Ghost is talking about. When Ray's on point and he gets that vibe, it's hard for you not to want to catch that wave. And so there's a lot of things that were going on in the making of Iron Man in Ghost's mind that kept it from being a classic to him. So I guess for him, I don't think it really starts until like, Supreme.
Let's rewind real quick because you said something, and Ray is like that quintessential East Coast MC. I think he's the
Yeah.
glue of the Wu-Tang. I
Well, they
think,
said it was dirty. That's funny. We
yeah,
say it's Ray, like all of us think it's Ray, but they say it's dirty. And Mike, they're probably right because I mean, the rest of their shit, it doesn't sound like Enter the Wu Tang, and it's because Old Dirty Bastard is a prevalent member on
definitely.
the
No,
Wu Tang.
he's kind of like the heart, like like Freaky Ty. You know what I'm saying? Because Lost Boys were never the same after Freaky Ty passed.
So did you see the part where Ghost is talking about how like way before the deal, was like the inspiration. He's running up to them. We're the greatest group in the world. They ain't even got
Mm.
no deal. They ain't even really made no records, and nobody heard. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's different.
that's
I will say after he passed, I think Ray kind of carried the torch. Being that Wu Tang member that would go out there and do features with people outside, of the crew. I mean, even down to Tash, Outkast, and stuff